A mummy over 5,000 years old frozen for decades in a cold storage room in Bolzano, and yet something lives within her, something that has just completely taken the scientific world by surprise. What researchers have now found in Ötzi's tissue will blow your mind.
And it's also going to get a bit gross because the scientists actually ate it. Hi guys, as you can see, I have a new setting for my videos. I thought it'd be kind of more personal if I wasn't in front of a green screen anymore, but here in a really nice studio setting. But it's still completely lacking in decor. Let me know in the comments what you think and how I should set up my studio desk for the videos. I'm really looking forward to your suggestions.
Did you know that Ötzi probably didn't just freeze to death, but was likely the victim of a murder? Feel free to write me and let me know what you already know about the topic. We'll unravel it all today. And if you want to be immediately informed about such fascinating discoveries from the world of science, why not subscribe to the channel right now? For you, it's just one click, but it helps me out so much.
And if you've already subscribed, you can appease the YouTube algorithm with a thumbs up. 5,000 likes should serve the purpose well. Thanks a lot, guys. So Ötzi, I'm sure you all know him by now. The Iceman discovered in 1991 in the Ötztal Alps at nearly 3,200 meters high, and since then likely the most famous murder case in human history. Because yes, Ötzi was probably murdered. The most plausible cause of death is an arrow shot to the left shoulder, most likely from an ambush around 5,300 years ago. So the case is definitely long since expired, you could say. By the way, this is how the Tagesschau reported it back then in 1991, the year I was born.
This is the mummified body that hikers discovered in the glacier ice of the Ötztal Alps. Experts estimate it to be around 4,000 years old. The 1.60 meter tall man lived during the Bronze Age. This was determined by a bronze axe found with the body. Other items found, like remains of clothing, shoes, and equipment, also clearly date back to the Bronze Age. Scientists are calling the discovery an archaeological sensation.
And the final days of this man's life must have been quite dramatic.
Research shows that Ötzi apparently had a substantial meal shortly before his death. It included ibex meat, fat, and grains. At the same time, his body bore several injuries, a cut on his hand, bruises, and of course the fatal arrowhead in his shoulder, which likely struck a major artery. It's also intriguing that traces of blood from several people were found on his gear and clothing, suggesting that Ötzi was involved in a violent conflict in the days leading up to his death.
Whether he fled, was pursued, or part of the fight himself, we don't know for sure. But it's quite clear, Ötzi's death was no peaceful falling asleep in the snow.
Rather, it was likely the brutal end to a story that reads like a 5,300-year-old true crime case. But that's not our topic today. Instead, we're focusing on the inner workings of the ice mummy. A brand new study published in the journal Microbiome examined Ötzi's so-called microbiome, that is the totality of all microorganisms living in and on the mummy.
Or rather, have lived, or, and this is the key point, are still living. What the researchers found there is truly insane.
The international team led by the Urac Research Institute for Mummy Research in Bolzano analyzed samples from Ötzi's tissue, his intestinal contents, his stomach contents, and the meltwater inside the mummy. For comparison, they also examined samples from the glacier ice and the soil around the original discovery site in the Ötztal Alps. This was an extremely complex investigation, and the researchers combined tissue samples, skin swabs, meltwater samples, and results from earlier studies, including a deep frozen soil sample that had been taken directly at the time of recovery in 1991 and stored ever since. The goal, to understand which microorganisms were already part of Ötzi during his lifetime and which were added later. And that's when things started to get interesting. First, the expected, yet still fascinating findings. In the mummy's intestinal tract, the researchers actually found genetic traces of Ötzi's original gut microbiome. This gut flora from the Copper Age closely resembles the few known examples of earlier male gut bacteria, species that are virtually non-existent in modern humans living in industrialized societies.
So, if you've ever wondered what a Stone Age human's gut looked like before the invention of white bread, processed sugar, and fast food, Ötzi has the answer.
And that means Ötzi literally carries a piece of prehistory within him, or more precisely, in his gut. So folks, before your next daring trek through the Alps, think carefully about what you eat. Scientists 5,000 years from now might be very interested in the contents of your gut.
But the actual highlight of the study is something else, and it caught even the scientists cold in every sense of the word.
The researchers discovered something unexpected in Ötzi's tissue, in the meltwater, and even in stomach samples: living, cold-adapted yeast fungi, species that are genetically closely related to strains from extremely cold regions like Antarctica. And these yeast fungi didn't just live in Ötzi at some point in the past. They exhibit modern DNA. This means they have apparently reproduced in relatively recent times. Although Ötzi has been dead for over 5,000 years, study leader Mohammed Sahan, a microbiologist at URAC Research, describes it this way: a mummy's microbiome is unique because we are dealing here simultaneously with 5,000-year-old microbes and with modern microorganisms that have been introduced since the discovery. These yeast fungi are not simply passive relics of the past. They still exist today, possibly in a kind of dormant state, under the museum's stable preservation conditions at -6°C and high humidity. Frank Meixner, director of the Institute for Mummy Research, sums it up this way: these organisms have accompanied Ötzi on his long journey through the millennia, and the mummy is therefore not a static relic, but a dynamic biological system. A dynamic biological system that sounds abstract at first. A 5,300-year-old corpse, and biological processes are still taking place within it. The ice hasn't stopped everything. Another detail is particularly fascinating. 3 of the 4 yeast strains discovered possess the genetic ability to break down phenol. And phenol was precisely the substance used after Ötzi's discovery to remove mold from the mummy's surface. It could therefore be that these yeasts used the phenol as a food source and thereby gained an unintended selective advantage. The preservation measures may have given very specific microorganisms a competitive edge.
Now you might be wondering, that's all well and good, but what's the point of it all? Does this have any practical use, or is it just pure basic research for mummy nerds? In fact, it could be both and more, because Sahin and his team have already tested the yeast for practical applicability in initial experiments, and I did mention at the beginning that it's going to get a bit gross today. Mohammed Sahin says in an interview that he and his team tried to start a sourdough with these ancient cold-active fungi from Ötzi.
Brother,
At first nothing happened. The yeast first had to get used to the new environment, but after several weeks and regular care, the dough rose. Completely normal dough that rose within 24 hours. They baked bread from it, bread from yeast cultures from a 5,000-year-old glacier corpse. Now, I rarely say no to food, but in this case I would politely decline. The baking result was supposedly still in need of improvement on the first attempt. Mohammed Sahin openly admits to never having baked bread before, but the principle works. And the researchers are already thinking ahead. Cold active yeast could save energy in the production of bread, beer and other fermented foods because they are active even at low temperatures without any additional heating. Initial talks with experts from the Weihenstephan brewery are reportedly already underway. So maybe we'll soon have Ötzi beer fresh from the tap with a view of the Alps. I know the story is already pretty crazy.
So let's return to the actual significance of the study. It reveals 2 things. First, after more than 30 years of intensive research, Ötzi has still not been fully deciphered. He continues to pose a mystery to science and enriches it with every new discovery. Marcus Samardelli, a conservation expert and co-author of the study, sums it up. The conditions under which glacier mummies are preserved are not yet fully understood. This study significantly expands our knowledge. Second, the interplay between the mummy, the environment, and microorganisms is far more complex than we thought. Even extreme cold does not completely halt biological processes. The ice preserves, but it does not kill everything. And this has implications not only for archaeology, but potentially also for biotechnology, food research, and our understanding of where and how life can survive under extreme conditions.
It's absolutely incredible how much information is contained in a single dead body that's been frozen in the Alps for millennia. And the craziest part is the thought that Ötzi himself couldn't possibly have had any idea about everything that's happening now. I'll keep you updated on all further discoveries regarding Ötzi. So please feel free to subscribe to the channel and remember to give a thumbs up so we can hit 5,000 likes. And if you were fascinated by this look into the past, then I've got something else for you. Because while we dove deep into the Copper Age with Ötzi, next time we're going even further back.
And at the same time, we turn to one of the oldest and most enigmatic structures in human history. At Stonehenge, scientists have made a discovery so fundamental that it could turn our entire understanding of what early humans were capable of and knew upside down. Was human history perhaps very different from what we previously thought? You can find out in the video shown at the top right. As always, check out another topic related to science and space in the bottom right corner. Otherwise, I'd say see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.